make a comparison. It might seem kind of silly, but think in a sort of a simpler time where, say you've got, let's say a woman that has to walk home from a bar or a restaurant or a store or work or whatever, right? And there's a shady looking individual who might be following them home. And let's say her husband or her brother or whatever was giving her advice on what to do. You would say, stay over by, find a tough looking guy and kind of stay by him. Or especially if like something happens in an enclosed room or whatever, it's like, go find a tough person who can handle this, right? Who can sort of protect you, right? I mean,
that's what I'm going to do too. I'm going to find the biggest guy.
Yeah, right? I mean, I think that's common advice that you would say, if you feel like you're not safe and somebody is a threat, find somebody who can help you. Now, we're talking about an assault or a, or whatever. Now that person has a gun. Find somebody else that has a gun and get behind them. That's kind of the the equation there. That's the mindset, right? Where if everybody, or if 2 or 3 guys in the room or gals had guns on them, hey, let them handle this. That kind of thing. They are the new heroic.
Not everybody wants to or has the capacity to. Some people might think they can and go through the training, but in the heat of it, realize that they can't and they're not cut out for it, and they freeze up and they don't pull their weapon and save the day.
Yeah.
But everybody's different. Some people are going to react in different ways. But I think it's good to have those people who are, obviously you're going to put them through a background check. You're going to do, a psych evaluation and stuff like that before. I think that's what the enhanced background checks is that we should have psych evaluations. We should have, look at their high school records. Was there any crazy threats that occurred? Now they had to be
but
after
that wouldn't
18.
have any merit. I mean,
well, sure,
people aren't rational when they're 18 or 16 or 15.
But if it's not a spectrum, it's not the right word, but it's
the frontal cortex isn't even fully developed.
Sure.
I mean, have you said anything when you were a teenager that you regretted saying, and you were like, "Oh shit, I hope."
But if you wrote a hit list of people you want to kill in high school,
I'm saying it's not one thing
on the list.
What if two kids are in the basement? Because that's where I hang out. It's my basement. So they're in the basement and they're making a list for fun of all the kids that they want to off. This is totally imaginary. And I'm not saying that's right. I'm just saying that's things kids potentially do.
I'm saying
pretty
those
much what the
kids
Columbine
need to
kids
have
did.
an eye kept on them.
That's pretty much what the Columbine
kids did. So
they're
about
did.
28.
So now, they're dumb. Kids are dumb, and I'm not saying that that's the lone disqualifying factor. I'm saying that if you're going to create,
they're not dumb. They're just not developed.
No, they're kind of dumb.
It's a big difference. I mean,
No, I understand what you're saying, and I agree with you. There are some extremely intelligent 17, 16, 18, 15, 13-year-olds. There's no doubt about it. But yeah, they're not as worldly. They're not developed completely, and it's they're still sponges a little bit. We're getting off the point here. That they make that hit list in high school. That's not a disqualifying factor. You can have that as long as there's been nothing else, and you can still get a firearm.
As long as you're not also stockpiling.
Right.
If
so it's a
the two
metric.
Together seem to go be a problem. I
right.
agree
So
with that.
they've got a checklist. Whatever that metric is that they put together at whatever Department of Homeland Security or whoever does it, maybe state by state, and they say, okay, well, not only did you make a hit list whenever you were 17 years old, but you also own 2 ARs already, and you've bought a lot of ammunition over the past 2 months. Yeah, number one, we're not going to sell you anything else. And number two, we're going to have a look at things here, Billy. We need to talk to you about some things.
So there's a big part of this I want to get into that we haven't even really touched on much. Several prominent left-leaning Democrat politicians have come out attacking Trump, either directly or not, for his racist rhetoric that contributes to these attacks. Have you heard any of that?
Yeah.
Have you?
Yeah, I heard about it.
What do we think of that?
And a hush falls over.
Dave.
Well, I have an opinion, but I'll let you go.
Yeah, well, I kind of feel like it's political maneuvering, right? Or
For
meandering.
sure. Yep.
I don't really pay attention to it a whole lot. I mean,
do you think there's any truth to it? Do you think some of what Trump has said and the way he acts contributes to these people attacking?
I think Trump's mannerisms are definitely if they don't condone I mean, I don't want to say he condones violence because I'd probably have to go back and really look at what he said over the course of times. But he definitely says aggressive and negative things. And I think he is good at riling up that side of a person, whether they realize it or not. I mean, in terms of people that may follow him or people that can't stand him, you know. So the people that can't stand him are totally looking for a reason to can't stand him anymore and find it, you know, figure out, well, he's doing all this and he's the cause of this. Yeah. And I don't believe that. I don't think, you know, I mean, it didn't start with when he went into office. Sure. It's not going to end probably when he goes out of office. And I think both sides do it. I mean, he did make a statement about, and hey, frankly, I hope it works out, you know, where, you know, I think he mentioned tech companies should use the tools they have to start monitoring closer.
Well, we talked about AI last time. I was going to bring that up. It's like, okay, so we're all afraid of it listening to us, but maybe there are some key words that it should be listening for.
Right.
That if you know, if maybe it's AR, I don't know, but that would, of course, the gun lobby would be against that too, and they would be all up. And
yeah, it's a real interesting thing to me, the gun lobby, the whole privacy thing of guns. Like, not only that people want guns, I can understand that, and that even that people want an assault rifle, I can understand that, because it's like saying, well, you know, why would you want a motorcycle? That's so unsafe. You know, you can just have a car. Well, you know, it's fun and it's out there, and it's. If you go through what it takes to get one, I get it. Now, 5 assault rifles, I don't know. Do you have a school for that, or what's going on?
But there's people that have 5 motorcycles. You can only drive one.
Yeah, that's true.
You know, there's people that have hundreds of cars. You don't, you know, you only need one. You know,
and
it's just a hobby. It's a different hobby.
Argue
how many guitars do you own?
Different kinds of weapons.
Like very few.
This one's
really?
for shooting further distances, or this is
right.
You know, or I'm just a collector. I like all the different, you know. But yeah, I hear what you're saying.
You own more than one guitar, though, right?
I have access to more than one guitar.
Jared owns 2. How many guitars can you play at one time?
I can only play one.
How many hammers do you own?
I own a lot of hammers, but they're different purposes.
Right,
exactly. Different purposes here,
so
too.
I kind of look at guitars like that.
Yeah. And I think gun owners would do the same with their guns.
And I would agree with that. Like, I can see the reason to have a handgun. I can see the reason to have a shotgun. I can see the reason to have a good rifle. The assault rifle thing... I don't personally. It comes down to like a fun thing.
Yeah.
And maybe that's the thing where, well, it's like, well, maybe you don't need to own it. Maybe that's something that you can just rent, like a kayak or something. Sure. When you want to go to the range and have fun with it.
I would say the assault rifle is the equivalent of, let's say, what's that guitar that has like that has two bodies?
2 necks.
Yeah, 2 necks, right. That's the same kind of thing, right? You don't really need that. Nobody needs that. It's fun though. It's cool looking.
It's more like a Marshall stack, maybe, or something.
Well, whatever. But it's just
22-piece drum set.
Someone's showing off,
right?
And wanting to say like, mine's bigger than yours.
It's that extremes thing, and that is something that probably we could all work on.
Yeah.
You know, not saying outlaw.
Well, you're not going to hurt anybody
with
guns or with guns. You're not going to hurt anybody with guitars or drums, but
the privacy thing is like, it's like, what is that? Why do you have the need to not only be like, these are my guns, you're not taking my guns, but I don't want you to know what I have in my gun locker.
I think it's because, like we said before, they're afraid the government is going to take them away. And I think that's a legitimate concern. I don't think it's going to just happen overnight, and it would take a huge effort, and it would be a major deal in this country if you tried to take them away. But people, I think, have a legitimate concern to think that that could happen. And the more they know what I have and how many rounds I have, the more I'm on their radar. And they're going to definitely want to take them when they realize I have 6 guns and 8,000 rounds.
Right.
Even if it's just for target shooting and practice and having fun.
Do you feel the you know, the Constitution's, you know, do you feel having a gun as a constitutional right is in the same color as what it was when that was written in the Constitution?
I
because
think
I hear
it's
this defense
different.
a lot.
Right. It's our constitutional right. I think the reasons for it are different. People wanted to feel like they could defend themselves from their own government if necessary, and they had, at the time, a relatively recent reason to think that they needed to have that.
There was recent wars going on, but they weren't fighting each other as much as they were fighting, you know, whether it be like 7 Years' War, French and Indian War, or, you know, Revolutionary War. I mean, they weren't fighting like the Civil War where they were fighting each other.
Right. But they were fighting
they being
essentially.
The US citizens.
I mean, to some degree, it was each other. Some of those people lived nearby who were part of the Red Coats. You know, I mean, that's. But either way,
it was more nationalities fighting, right?
Right.
On soil.
But it was still
no, I
state.
mean, it
But
was,
there was a
still
lot
state
with
militias. Yeah,
right?
Still
Exactly.
state
Right.
militias that had organized and
but it was
were
specifically
defending their
people who
territories.
Is
were
that
fighting
relevant
against
now?
their own government.
I think it could be relevant.
I think when you hear about militias now, you start to think,
Oh yeah,
Oh,
shit,
yeah,
you're
right.
like crazy
Now,
people. Who,
Right.
I don't
like,
think it's relevant in
But the National
sense-
Guard, like Missouri
if-
National Guard, is not that far from a state militia, right? But then they have issued. They're part of the United
that's
States
a
Army.
division of
Yeah,
the military.
And they're issued weapons and
I
everything.
think the difference is back in that time, if the military wanted to try to come take over your town,
Mhm.
the town could fight back and have
Maybe
a
a
couple
chance.
towns could
Yeah.
maybe get together and rally and have a chance at defending
Right.
themselves. Now, if the military wants to come take
Yeah,
over
it's
your
over.
town, it's
you
over.
wouldn't
Like,
even know it happened.
Right.
right. I
Yeah.
mean, there's
Right.
all kinds
The
of ways they
drones are
could win.
coming.
Now, if you want to say, for whatever reason, maybe just the police, the local police, or the county police or whatever are going to come do something because whatever, and you need to defend yourself, okay. But yeah, you're going to
Have
lose.
you seen the police
Well,
in
I'm
St.
just saying.
Louis get together and
Full battle rattle.
do it?
Yeah.
I'm just saying they're
Yeah.
not going to fly an F-18 over your house. And
That's probably right on
Scott
the corner.
Air Force Base?
I mean, they got
Within
anyway,
tanks.
so
hours
you're
left.
right. It's
I
not
got-
as relevant anymore.
I
But
wanna
is
ask
it
a
still a need? I don't know.
question
Maybe.
to you guys, kind of
Yep.
changing this stuff. But you know who Neil deGrasse Tyson is, right?
Yes.
Did you hear about his tweet? That
A
got him in
little
bit.
bit, yeah.
So I'll read
yes,
it.
I did.
So he tweeted 2 days ago, in the past 48 hours, the USA horrifically lost 34 people to mass shootings, period. On average, across any 48 hours, we also lose 500 to medical errors, 300 to the flu, 250 to suicide, 200 to car accidents, 40 to homicide via handgun. And he said, often our emotions respond more to spectacle than to data. So he got blown up.
Yeah. In
about
other
this.
words, he's saying this isn't that big a deal.
I don't know that he's saying that at all.
I don't think he's saying that at all. I think he's saying that the media is churning the death among mass shooting or firearms as hyperbole compared to
Yeah.
all the other ways
Sure.
that death is equally as bad.
because they know that this gets everybody's emotions all
I think he
ginned
did a
up.
bad job of it.
Yeah,
I
he
think
did.
that's
he,
the same as
he
saying
missed the
this
mark,
isn't
and
that
he
big a
and he
deal.
came back out and he
Did he?
tweeted again and said, "Look, hopefully people can think about this a little bit more, understand what I was trying to say. Maybe I didn't articulate. I'm obviously paraphrasing, but he didn't articulate it as well as he could have. But if you are a reasonable individual, you can look at that and see that the point he's making is like it's we should appropriately get pissed off whenever people die to something like a mass shooting.
Mhm.
Absolutely. 34 people dying in any 2-day period is unacceptable. But what he's saying is that there's medical errors, the flu, there's probably the most interesting one is suicide and car accidents. I feel like those two things are probably way more preventable than a mass shooting. Suicides, I mean, maybe not as much, but I think 250 in a 48-hour period, and any average 48-hour period, if his numbers are accurate, I feel like we could cut that down. I feel like by educating people and talking to people
Yeah.
more.
But I think that right there plays in heavily to the issue with, mental illness. I think
Right.
there's a lot of people
Sure.
suffering from mental illness and just suffering from pain and anguish, and they're the ones killing themselves. And it's
Right.
the same genre, at least, of the type of people who need help who
So-
end up killing people.
So what about car accidents? Like
you're not
we
going
have
to prevent that.
Sure, we can. We have the technology. The government were to mandate. No one would like this either because I have an old car that doesn't have the technology. But
Right.
but if the government were to mandate, say no, every car has to be equipped with these accident prevention tools. Speed limits are this. All highways have to be equipped with
Yeah.
this and that.
I mean,
technology.
we do that, right?
We do to some degree already. We do seatbelts and whatnot.
Mhm.
But just to completely, just balls to the wall. All the automobile safety precautions that we know of today. Every car has to have Tesla-like cameras
Mhm.
and sensors on it.
Why don't you just give everybody a Tesla?
Well, sure,
It might
right?
be cheaper.
So we could definitely reduce those 200 people dying every 48 hours in car accidents. Reduce it. I'm not saying we could make it zero,
you could
but
reduce
you could
it.
significantly reduce it. You could significantly reduce all of these things.
But I think that's where this seems like an easily reducible thing. Like if we just get rid of all the guns, or if we just
and that's it. It's-
sign everybody up for a background check,
There's too much emotion
then
in it.
we'll know
And
who's disturbed.
Anyway,
Do you think it's an easily reducible thing?
No.
Mass shootings, I don't think it's easy.
I think it's one of the hardest
It's a
things
very
in the world to
complicated
do.
issue.
I mean, it's like talking about abortion. There's no easy solution for abortion. There's no easy solution to gun control. These are polarizing topics for a reason.
What do you think the causes are of this? I mean, because do you see similarities within the shooters or the people that carry out these acts?
Yeah, they're all
Yes.
crazy.
Well,
That's not a.
I mean,
wouldn't say
no,
crazy,
Can you
but I would
can you
say
find some
absolutely.
they have-
accurate? They did a crazy action maybe, but
crazy's we got to
So-
define that now too.
Right.
What is a mass
Well,
shooting?
exactly,
What is
right.
Sure, I'm
crazy?
going
and there's
against
a
my own
lot of
rules.
issues, even like when you go down to that rabbit hole of crazy. If you start looking at like how people are assessed for psychology,
Mhm.
there's psychologists that don't agree with the tests that
Sure,
are used to
for
do
sure.
that. I
Right,
mean, so there's
right.
sort of this convergence, like we talked about last time. This convergence of because we have so much more information, we start to realize, all these systems that we had in place don't
Mhm.
really work.
Mhm.
Or we just naturally know, like, it's just not that easy. You just can't screen everybody. And what if you screen them on the wrong day? What if next day they feel a little more desperate or a little more
Yeah.
sad? Or maybe they ate too much carbs and sugar in the morning and they're feeling crazy.
But then there's people who they just did seemingly illogical, no reason for this. Why did they do this kind of act? And then there's the people who like have studied up and they've developed over the years a hatred for a certain group,
Right.
like Mexicans in the case of the
so
El
you don't
Paso
put those
thing.
people in the same category.
But I
they're
mean,
not
he's
the
still
same.
disturbed. He still like has a mental
Sure.
thing.
But, yeah, see, I
But
think
in
the,
his mind, he's not disturbed, and
Yeah.
I'm sure he's got some compatriots who also think he's not
the
disturbed.
overarching common
there's a
theme is
difference.
that if you want to take another person's life, by definition, that makes you an unstable, insane lunatic. If you premeditate the taking of another life,
I don't know. Have
That-
you been around my daughter when people are eating chips?
right? But I mean, that's
It's
just
not
That's a really good example. I mean, and it's
Yeah.
nothing against your daughter or
Right.
anything, but that is a good. I think that's a good example. That's a situation where you and I and I think all three of us, could sit there and go, "It's crazy
yeah.
to get so upset
Mhm.
about somebody eating chips next to you," but
Yeah.
yet it affects this person in such a way that they have to remove themselves from their group or community and go off
Mhm.
because they can't handle that. Now she's learned to deal with that in that respect, But
right.
so that's one facet of one thing. So what does it take for each individual person? And the answer, I mean, it's not a question any of us can answer, like you said. I mean,
Yeah.
it's so hard, and that's the frustration I have when I look at the media and somebody starts saying, "Well, you got to take away all the guns,
Right.
or you got to increase laws." I'm like, well, maybe a little bit of this and a little bit of that, but really, what are the commonalities of all these people over the past 10 years? I mean, are there commonalities? Seems to be like the age is roughly in the same
Generally,
area.
yeah.
Yeah.
Generally, I think the
It's
person
like
that did the Las
18 to
Vegas
Las
25.
Vegas
shooting
was
was
an older
older.
guy, right?
But I mean-
and the South Haven, Mississippi guy was 39, but almost always it's like 18 to 25.
And one thing I did notice, kind of looking into stats, is that the amount of mass shootings, what you would consider, I think, a mass shooting, like a mass or a large group of people being shot,
Mhm.
that has jumped in the last 10 years. In other words, it's basically with social media becoming a platform in general, you've seen mass shootings double.
Right.
And we're doubled. I mean, in 82, 83, 84, you were looking at like 2 a year on average.
Mm.
And now you're looking at like 7 to 8.
Mm.
And we're already on course to keep that same
It's
same statistic.
Outrage culture. We talked about that a little bit. I mean, it's the more and more, like in 82, 83, people didn't know half the shit that was going on
Mhm.
because they didn't have the internet. So they weren't upset. They weren't pissed off. They also didn't have access to propaganda from right-wing groups or from left-wing groups.
What
Yeah,
do you
there
think
wasn't-
about it on a biological level as a species?
We're destructive individuals. I mean, we're destructive by nature. But I think to some degree all creatures are, but we are, because we're advanced and we have opposable thumbs and and we have the
Right.
means to make sophisticated weapons. We're that much more
And
destructive.
it's kind of a perpetual thing anyway, where they say another trait that all these shooters tend to have in common is they want the notoriety, and they are very aware of other people that have done this too, and they read up on it and they study
Mm.
how did they do it. I'm going to do that too, that kind of thing. And they know very much about other people who've shot up places, and
Right.
so the more that happens, the more people become aware of it. The more it's in the news, the more people hear about it, and it just becomes this snowball effect of more and more people getting interested in that. Okay,
I
we're
got one more
kind of
thing.
running out of time, but I want to get
Tough
to
shit, I got one more
something.
thing.
You're open to talk. I want to preface this. I'm going to get the beer out that
Okay.
we're going to drink today. I want to make very clear there's no sarcasm involved in this in any way.
That means there is.
There's no. I don't want this to come off as ill-timed or anything like that. There's
What kind of
actual
beard you
honor
get?
and respect in this. Now I'm building it up too
boy.
much, but
I'm afraid of what
I
he's
was
got.
just gonna say, I'm afraid.
I got a Mexican beer, Modelo Negra.
That's good beer.
And this, like I said, this is to honor those Mexican brethren who were shot down,
All right.
over the weekend. So I've never had this beer.
Neither have I.
Oh, it's
I've
good.
been wanting to try it, and completely coincidentally, just today, a friend highly recommended Modelo Negra.
I
He
would
sent me a
recommend it as
review
well.
and everything. So
All right. Well, I want to pour it into a
here
glass too.
you go.
But while we're getting those out, let me. So I saw an article. I don't know if you call it an article. A comment on a story we'll go with that mentioned MK Ultra. You familiar with MK Ultra?
No.
Either of you?
MK Ultra. It's not ringing a bell off the top of my head.
CIA operation started in the 50s to basically manipulate soldiers and other individuals through the use of LSD and other hallucinogenic drugs, as well as hypnosis and just brain manipulation. So One Flew Over a Cuckoo's Nest, the writer of that, allegedly he was a subject in the MK Ultra stuff.
Ken Casey? Is that who's?
That sounds right. And but basically, that's where the idea of the Manchurian Candidate comes from. Some people speculate that Lee Harvey Oswald was a subject of MK Ultra, and that these are government assets that are manipulated and then kept in reserve until needed.
Mm-hmm.
And so there is a very, very thin theory out there, and wearing my NASA shirt
Alex
for
Jones.
Alex Jones.
I was just going to say.
I didn't get this from Alex Jones, but I haven't been to his site in a long time, but I'm sure he's probably talking about it, that these actors were all MK Ultra subjects or something along those
Not
lines.
actors as if this didn't happen, but actors as in acting
the people that took the
Web
actions.
motivated.
Right. And so MK Ultra has technically been closed since like 1973. They destroyed a bunch of paperwork after the Watergate. Everybody got paranoid and started shredding everything that's like. So there's not a whole lot of documentation on it. So according to the CIA and according to all the powers, it is a dead program. It's not being used anymore. But we know the CIA does some shady shit. So who knows what the fuck they got going on? Maybe it's not LSD. Maybe they've got, DMT, or they've got other new drugs that we've never heard of that are mind altering, that they can do some hypnosis and implant a keyword that makes someone go fucking psycho in a heartbeat. They make a phone call.
You've never done psychedelics, have you?
No, sir.
Okay.
Have you?
Sure. Yeah, I don't think it works like that.
I don't either. I mean, I don't know. I don't think in one
lines,
thing. I don't think you can just take acid and then be triggered like that.
Right.
I think it's a program. So, Conspiracy Theory with Mel Gibson, the movie.
Yeah.
I think it does a good job. That's MK Ultra.
Mm-hmm.
That's the same. I don't think they call it that. Maybe they do. But that's the same idea, is that he had been not just given hallucinogenics,
right,
but he had been not electrolysis. What do you, electro? When they put they shock the fuck out of you.
Shock therapy.
Yeah, shock therapy. Thank you. As well as hypnosis and holding your eyes open and giving you
I don't
images.
think anybody doubts that, like you said, that went on for a long period of time.
No,
and
it's
people
documented.
think it is still going on, but
the question
the effectiveness of it is up for debate. Did it actually do any good?
So the question is on this latest rash of tragedies. There are people that think that there's so much political posturing and so much deep state posturing that the deep state, if you will, flipped a switch and said, all right, call out the boys. We need some mass shootings to happen to help our political agenda, because we're getting, near an election cycle.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I'm not saying that could be a right-wing thing. That could be a left-wing thing. Who the fuck knows,
Yeah. Now, I have heard that theory that many of these attacks are orchestrated, and this is like conspiracy theory, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that they're orchestrated by particularly the left, but the anti-gun political movement. So the goal here is that if we get enough of these situations, these horrific shootings, then eventually the public, by and large, will be okay with taking guns away. And that's the end goal.
That's the idea.
Let's disarm the public. and then the government will have more power and control.
Or it's none of that, and
Right.
they just need everybody to be full of piss and vinegar so that they can win the next election.
Could
And
be,
they really
for
have
sure.
no intent, like to Dave's point, they have no intent of taking any guns. They have no intent of really putting any laws on the books because everybody's in the pocket of the gun lobby, and they just need to use these things for their political agenda for the next cycle. That's I don't know. I mean,
I'd say that's more likely than this conspiracy effort of
Yeah.
All right,
I mean-
let's drink some Mexican beer.
I feel like it's just shit on. Oh, that was a good topic.
No, it is a good topic.
Yeah.
I'd love to get into it more. There's plenty of
Is this
other
twist
things.
off? What are we doing
I'm not
here?
sure.
I doubt it.
All right, well, give me that silver thingy.
Yeah, we've got it. Will that
Oh,
work
yeah.
on a stubby
Sure,
neck?
let's try it. Let's give it a
All
shot.
right.
Let's see what happens.
Okay, I'm gonna do it. You think it'll break through the foil?
Fuck it. Let's see what happens. Didn't work.
No,
Oh,
it kinda
making
came. There we
progress.
go, there we
Look
go.
at
There you go, sir.
that. Yeah. That worked
So
pretty
this is the amber version of Modelo. It is actually what is it? It's a very specific, I forget, type of beer. It's a lager, but it's let me see if I'll get to it later.
It's a medium-bodied lager with slow-roasted caramel malt brewed for a rich, smooth taste. And a rich, smooth taste it is.
good. All right.
So it's not just a lager, it is, and if I can find it,
It's a beer.
uh
It's a cerveza.
Munich Dunkel style lager, which is
Really?
apparently a very specific thing and not as common these
Interesting.
days. All right.
Cheers, gentlemen.
Cheers.
Are you familiar with Michael Pollan? Or Pollan?
I
I don't know
don't
how you
think
say
so.
it. He wrote
It's good.
anyway, he wrote
It
a
is
book
good.
recently about hallucinogenics and the way they're being currently used in therapy for terminally ill patients, for depression, for PTSD. So you may look into that if
Yeah.
you're looking into the conspiracy side of it, which I know I'm aware of the government programs.
Right.
I mean that's kind of, but
I think it's interesting. I don't know. I know there's been a lot of studies and there's been a lot of movies and fictional depictions of these things. I'm kind of hung up on the Lee Harvey deal, the whole Manchurian Candidate. I think there's something else there. I'm not saying he didn't act alone, but there's something else going on, I think. And so whenever someone drops that little nugget into, and it's very Alex Jonesy, it's very InfoWars-ish, that it's like, yeah, well, you know what? Stranger things have happened, right? I mean, we've seen some weird shit that's gone on in this world, in this country, and there's a lot of shit that we'll never know about. So who am I to say that that's not what's going on? I mean, who knows? Who knows? There are so many powerful people that just sit in the shadows, and I don't say they pull strings, but they definitely have influence, and they make phone calls, and they're like, we need to make this happen because I need to keep selling guns, or I need to keep selling beer, or I need to keep selling oil, whatever it is, or cars, and they have sway over all the politicians, and to some degree or another. I think that's terrifying. That's also some of the appeal of Trump, I think, is that he's less likely to be swayed by people like that because he doesn't need any of them. He could be that guy pulling the fucking lever because he had enough before he ran. He had enough clout to be able to call a couple people and get some shit done, and probably did. It's probably how he made some real estate deals happen in New York. So I think he's maybe possibly less tainted, but who knows? I don't know. There's a lot of weird shit going on. I think if I had to sum my feelings about it, it's tragic. I think before anybody wants, and including ourselves, before we can have a meaningful discussion with the expectation of finding some semblance of a solution or resolution, we need to define these terms. We need to define what is a mass shooting? What is an assault rifle? What do we consider a white supremacist? What do we consider a right-wing radical or a left-wing radical? Is Antifa a terrorist organization? Is the KKK a terrorist organization? I think most definitely the KKK is, and I think most definitely Antifa is as well. They have very different agendas and objectives, but they're both wreaking havoc, and they're also radicalizing people and creating and weaponizing people. Some worse than others, maybe, but yeah, we're not going to solve any of this shit until we are talking about, or we're all talking the same language, you know?
Well, I think one of the things that's troubling about these latest shootings is just how the media and the politicians are politicizing it, right? They're using it for political gain. The left is trying to paint the right as racist, and this is why we need to get him out of office, and blah blah blah. It shouldn't be, in my opinion, it shouldn't be about race. Even the one in El Paso, which clearly was about race, it shouldn't be in a political way. And I think it's just a shame that that's kind of where it's going.
Right.
But
what the Dayton one? I heard that guy was actually a Elizabeth Warren supporter.
So he's being labeled as an extreme leftist.
Okay.
Which I'm not exactly sure what that means.
Antifa? I mean,
that what that is? I guess, but I don't know that he was part of Antifa, but that's how he's being labeled. But yeah, that was another thing. We could keep going a whole other hour and a half,
Right.
but he was labeled as an extreme leftist. The guy in El Paso was anti-immigrant, which I kind of classify as like extreme rightist. I don't know.
Yeah, alt-right, far-right, yeah.
Right. And then the other guy had no discernible ideology at this point. There was no obvious motive with him. So you kind of got all across the board, right? There wasn't this clear pattern of like, look, all these guys are like this, which I feel like that has been portrayed. Okay. In one sense, I feel like the left tries to portray all these shooters as conservative, right-wing, gun-owning, guys who are out here to take out whatever. And then the right, I've heard it said, in fact, recently, I think a politician was saying, all these shooters tend to be Democrats. And it's like, well, wait a minute. Are either of those true? Is there any pattern politically to these guys? Have you heard anything, Dave?
I haven't heard anything.
No?
I mean, I don't know their political stance.
Have you ever heard
these people?
Okay.
I mean, I don't know. I was under the impression most of these people are very young. Majority of them are white males. They come from middle class to upper middle class families. So they have these consistencies that are kind of running through. And so I'm sitting here going, well, what is the cause of this? Instead of trying to figure out like, well, how do we stop this? What are we going to do to respond to this? We're going to take away guns, or we're going to, I mean, behaviorally, what is the cause of this? I mean, you almost need a more of an anthropologic review as opposed to
very
just saying
complicated.
It's very complicated, right?
I think those labels are dangerous. I mean, just like we don't want to label Muslim individuals as all being terrorists, right? And you're not, and I'm not, and no one here is, right? Most people today wouldn't, I don't think. But by saying, but just that label saying, oh, well, they're white, early 20s, middle class, or affluent upbringing males. That I don't know that fucking matters. It could be a black kid. It could be a.
But if it's a consistency,
it
definitely.
Okay, well then,
a very strong
but
consistency.
then if you're going to make that leap, then you need to make the same leap on every.
Is it a leap? I think it's.
No,
I think it's just
I
that's the
agree with
stat.
If you're going to make that judgment, which you just did, let's not call it a leap. Whatever. You're going to make that assertion, assertion, then you should make the same across other trends that you see. So let's say. Oh, this is going to get heavy. Maybe I should. Maybe I shouldn't even say this.
Yeah, maybe you shouldn't.
There are trends in other ethnic and
demographics.
Demographics.
Okay, before we get into trouble, let's stay on this. Let's stay on our subject. I mean, I know I see what your point is going to be.
But I feel like you're almost taking offense at the
idea.
idea.
I feel like you are too.
It's not offense. I'm just saying it's slippery. That you can't.
Hey,
if you want,
life is slippery.
Well, sure.
Everything
but
is
for
slippery.
the same reason why we didn't want to persecute a Muslim walking through the airport every time they went through TSA, and we shouldn't. It should be random, and we don't want a racial profile. We want to avoid the same thing when we're talking about white guys or white women or black women or
Right.
black guys
You're
or,
right,
or
for
infants or anybody.
You don't want to say every 20-something white middle-class
I'm just saying
affluent
to be
male is a
careful.
threat, but you have to notice a trend, and he's asking the question, what's going on here?
What's the
problem
behavioral
that's
aspect that's causing
these
that
Sure.
people?
within these consistent trends?
Yeah, I don't know.
You know,
Yeah.
So you could say, well, I'll bet they're, feeling intimidated about their female sexuality, and you'd go, no, they're not, because they're not females, they're
Right.
white males.
Sure.
I'll bet they're feeling threatened by their minority, treatment. It's like, no, they're not minorities. They're, so you can start finding a trend based on,
Yeah.
you can eliminate certain things based on who the demographic is.
I just think I
is
go back to
slippery,
what I
though.
was
I
saying
agree.
earlier. Labels are bad. And
Yeah.
you find for research purposes, maybe, but whenever we start putting that out there in the public eye and putting it on CNN and Fox News and MSNBC.
well, what part of it is so upsetting to you? I don't understand
it's not
what's
that it's
triggering
upsetting.
you.
It's and I'm not triggered.
It's the white part, isn't it?
No, it's not at all. I think it's a bad idea to paint with a broad brush. I've said that repeatedly on this podcast, that whenever we start saying this group does this, that's bad.
I never, but this group
that's-
are shooters that have committed a specific type of crime,
Sure.
and so I'm saying, what are the consistencies with all these people?
I think you need to drill down a little bit further. They're all white guys. Absolutely. They're bad people, and they're all white males. I don't have any problem with that at all. I
what's
know
their backgrounds, and I'm
sure, right. So maybe
I'm
they
not just
were
talking
all,
about these
and
four.
maybe they
I'm
were all
talking about the
bullied.
last 10
Right,
years.
yeah,
Maybe they were
25,
maybe
30
we
years.
we
Were
look
the-
at
Were the Columbine kids bullied?
yeah, I believe
Were
so.
they?
And you look at the
I
one
don't
down
know.
in Florida, the Parkland shooting. I mean, that kid was definitely bullied by some of the people that are now gun rights or left-wing activists, the young people that are out there in the public eye. Hogg, I don't know if he was one of the bullies, but one of the girls, the one with the shaved head that was very public, allegedly was known to bully that young man. She was a bully, picked on him for whatever reason. It
So
could be
these
something
people were
so,
victims that turned into assassins, basically.
Yeah, but I wouldn't even call him that. I'd still call him.
But I mean, if you're being bullied over and over again,
He's
you're
a victim.
of
He's a
being-
victim,
right?
yeah. But then when does it?
So then,
switch
is it the
flip, you know?
bully's fault? Do they hold responsibility?
I don't know if
in
they
some
hold
respect?
responsibility for someone taking that dramatic of an action, but they should obviously. We should look at the root cause. We should look at the root cause. We should try to control.
Well, that's kind of
all
what I'm
factors.
saying, right?
Yeah.
Is the What is the cause of the behavior behind this?
I don't disagree with what you're saying there. All I was
Okay.
saying is be careful with painting with a broad brush, because if
Right.
we do that with any,
I
didn't feel like I
lean
was.
more with Dave on what he was saying than with you. But I will say, okay, along the lines of painting with a broad brush, and we got into this very briefly earlier, and I'm surprised it didn't become a bigger topic, but people who want to crack down on illegal immigration
Mhm.
are, in my opinion, automatically deemed racist. Oh, you're anti-immigrants, you racist bastard. How dare you? And
But-
now you are part of the problem that's leading to people wanting to go attack immigrants. And I'm saying that is a dangerous, slippery slope to start saying that people who are against illegal,
With
in
keyword,
all caps,
keyword.
illegal
Yeah.
immigration are suddenly racist and
Yeah.
are inciting violence. Like, that shouldn't be correlated, but it is.
Yeah.
So can't you open a conversation with that person and say, well, let's back it up and, first of all, how do you feel about open borders compared to closed borders? You know what I mean?
Right.
Let's define exactly what
yeah.
you're trying to say.
I'd like to have that conversation, but many people don't want to have it. They assume that you are a racist bastard because
Right.
you're against.
Well, I don't care what anybody assumes.
Well,
I mean, if you're going to assume something, you're already done it. So
but
what
that's
do I
the
care?
problem is that
You can't
happens
go
all
back.
the
It's
time.
not a
Yeah,
problem
sure.
for me. I just
Well-
don't acknowledge it. I'm just like, well, you're not a part of the conversation. If you're assuming that all these variables that don't actually exist or that you're making up to benefit your own point of view, well, I don't care about that.
Well,
If you wanna have a real
unfortunately,
conversation
lots
about
of
it, let's
things
back up
happen
and
in
talk
this
about it.
world based on assumptions, based on generalizations,
Right.
and
But
just
I mean,
because
if
it
you
doesn't bother
can't-
you right here, it might bother you a few years from now if you get lumped into the racist group who suddenly has to pay, attrition for this incident. or
Okay,
whatever.
well, let me rephrase what I'm trying to say. Boy, this is a much
Hey.
different feeling podcast than the last time. I don't think I'm going to get invited back.
No,
soon.
well,
No,
here's
definitely.
the point, and I'm not mad at you, and I don't think he is either. This is a good conversation. I'm not upset about anything. So
Good.
go ahead.
Yeah, what was my point?
I'm
I'm not
sorry
sure.
I interrupted you.
What I'm saying is, look, I'm not. You want to make progress. You want to try to figure out, try to solve as best you can what these issues are. In this case, it's mass shootings, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so, if a person's for the benefit of their point of view or their political stance or the fact that they don't like immigrants or the fact that they believe there shouldn't be guns, is going to use quick straw man arguments to get their point across. To me, when I say I'm not going to mess with that or I'm not going to acknowledge that, that means I'm not going to waste my time at this time with it. So if I have a task at hand where I'm trying to figure out the consistencies or figure out, what is causing these crimes, and somebody else, and I know that person off in left field is sitting there going, get rid of the guns because they are liberal in their case maybe, and they don't believe in guns or for whatever reason.
Mm-hmm.
I hear their words. I'm putting them aside because they're just going to slow me down. And if they want to have that conversation, I can, but I want to stay. And I think people who are trying to make laws should stay at, keep the task at hand and not get sidetracked.
Yeah. I think the reason I got worked up was when you basically said, well, that doesn't bother me. I don't care what they think about me if they're not taking the time to get into it.
In the context of,
right.
in terms of trying to figure out this.
That's a slippery, dangerous slope. If you don't care what everybody else thinks about you, is suddenly, if they aren't using logic and reason, you're just going to get lumped into whatever they want to lump you into. And
that's true. And you get enough people in a group that don't use logic and reason, and then you have a real problem. And we have that with vaccinations, for instance.
That's
well,
right.
That's a whole other topic. Yeah.
A whole other topic.
Yeah.
But okay, I'm going to give you my 2 cents of what I think this is about, what I was trying to drive at. I keep looking back at, we're all around the same age. So in the 80s,
some of us are younger than others.
We weren't really thinking a lot about, whoa, there's a lot of mass shooting going on.
Right.
Whoa, what's up with that?
Right.
I mean, it wasn't really a thing as much. And I was like, well, what was going on then that's not going on now? Or what wasn't going on then that is going on now? And I'm sorry, it keeps coming back to technology for me. Humans they exercise the art of gameplay. They exercise, we used to play war. We would fantasize about that stuff. We would play board games with it. We would interact with that. We would get into situations where we would have to define the difference between bullying and arguing, or bullying and getting into a fight. Did you ever get in a fight in school through all your school? You?
Not really.
At least
but
once?
Kind of. Yeah.
So you had, at one point in your life, you had to cross that threshold of how to deal with a person on a physical level, right? And I did too. Okay. Those aspects seem to be gone. In fact, they're definitely pushed aside, you know. So, and this kind of goes back.
Fights at school?
Very rarely.
I think you might see it more in a smaller town school where there's.
I heard that.
I'm just saying. I think
they do exist.
There's more
in our school here. There are fights. They are nowhere near
what they used to be.
Well, I was in suburbia growing up in a suburban high school, and yeah, there was fights every damn day. I mean, it was a commonplace thing.
I'm almost talking more grade school stuff too.
Yeah,
or middle school. Yeah. I'm talking stuff where they were learning experiences as well, I guess I would say. And now we don't have that, but what we do have is the ability to sort of create groups of like-minded people and to call those groups into action or to support each other in some way or another. And that's where you're getting, to me, is where you're getting these weird, this group over here all of a sudden has decided that we shouldn't have assault guns, or this group over here has decided that you are a racist if you think that we shouldn't allow all immigrants to come in. You know what I mean? Where now I've just mixed two drastically different things, but I mean the basis of this is the same. Where we've sort of lost our ability to deal with the human side of what we are sort of encoded with, and part of that is violence, and part of that is conflict, and part of the learning aspect of how do we get past that. There's a threshold between bullying and letting two people work out a dispute, or even young people, right? And teachers don't have the ability to make that judgment call at all now. And I don't know if they should or not. I'm not an educator. My wife would be better suited for that or not. But I mean, sometimes it's better to let things play out for the better learning experience on both sides, and sometimes you got to step in and go, look, you know,
Right.
but that's gone.
Yeah.
You know, so you have people now who are totally connected with a lot of information, totally connected with amazing video games, totally connected with amazing movies, and totally
Video games.
connected
Yeah.
as much as they want or as little as they want with like-minded people
Mhm.
in multiple platforms.
I definitely think that's part of it. The networking that you can do with like-minded people is so powerful compared to we were kids.
And with adolescents or people in their younger years, I would think, and this is me projecting because I don't know this for a fact, I would think that there's more of a sense of life has sort of a fakeness to it that maybe we don't take on as much because we've traveled, you know, we've
Mhm.
kind of kept a path of pre, you know, internet, pre, you know, virtual living, and we do live that way. I mean, our phones are our pockets. It's how we
Mhm.
communicate. It's how we get jobs. It's how we do all this stuff. And then you see all these. I mean, I'm trying to see this, I guess, from the mind of a 21 or 24 or 19-year-old person who's going, you know, these political people and all this stuff is happening, and I'm just gonna make my mark, or
Mhm.
I'm gonna do something real for once. Now I'm
Mhm.
projecting.
Sure.
But I guess what I'm saying is the fundamental behind that.
Yeah.
I wonder if there is some. I wonder if there's more legitimacy in that sort of idea as opposed to people shouldn't have assault weapons, or
Yeah.
people, you know, shouldn't conceal and carry, or should.
Maybe when we were in high school, if you were even considering doing something like this, committing this kind of act, you wouldn't even think about, I don't think, that it would get on national news, much less international
No.
news. Like, that just wasn't a thought. We didn't, not everybody had a Fox News or CNN. At most, you had local NBC
Well, you
News,
had Tom Brokaw and, you
Yeah.
had Ted Koppel. Yeah,
but
those guys.
you weren't necessarily thinking notoriety. If I was going to be notorious for something, it was going to be a local notoriety, maybe in
Yeah.
St. Louis or something like that. But now you're talking internet and social media and whatever, and you know, whatever I do is going to be viral. I'm going
Sure.
to get on fucking YouTube.
Well, I think
I can't wait.
that's
That
exactly
kind
what
of thing.
I think part of your point, definitely not the whole of your point, but a point that I would like to make too is that it's media's fault. It's technology, the tech companies, it's media, it's these images and ideas that are easily accessible, and even if you don't go and seek them out, sometimes they're shoved down someone's throat. You know, they're there, and they're ever present, and you
Yeah.
can't get away from them. And I'm definitely not blaming video games or movies,
Right.
but if you have to question what impact those things have. If someone is already a little bit off kilter,
Mm-hmm.
and then they start playing Call of Duty, or they start playing what's the other one? The one stealing cars or whatever, Grand Theft Auto.
Yeah.
You got to wonder what that does to them, because they do.
Now,
They lose their sense of
on the-
reality, and they start to get into this little
Yep.
dream
Or
world.
I would think it at least makes that sort of act seem a bit superficial.
Yeah, I would
Like
agree.
I
where we
saw-
were kids, would be like, steal a car.
Right.
I mean, I had friends that would steal cars, but I was always like, geez.
Yeah, that's a little over the line,
Yeah.
guys.
I
Yeah.
saw a diagram or a chart that basically showed video game sales or saturation and amount of mass shootings. And they showed all these developed countries where video games are very prominent and they're playing the exact same games that they're being played here,
Mhm.
Call of Duty and whatever.
Mhm.
And it was like, here's these clusters down here, and then the US was like up here all by itself.
Mhm.
Now we know there's all kinds of other issues and social issues that go on to cause that, but to try to blame video games, and I know you're not,
Hmm.
but to say, because I mean, in Japan they're playing the exact same games we are,
Right.
and they're not shooting everybody up all the time. You know, so
Different
it's like-
culture, though.
right? It is. It's a
Right.
cultural thing. That's where I think you can't blame games or even the media. I mean, what are we going to say? Well, we guess we should get rid of the news and get rid of social media.
I don't know.
Well,
I think
maybe.
it's just an
That's not a
unfortunate.
bad
idea.
Maybe we should.
Limit it.
You
a
heard
little
it
bit.
here first.
Yeah.
That's right.
Well, even if they just said, and they've done this. The last time there was I guess it was probably a couple months ago, there was a shooting, and they made it a point to not publicize the shooter's name. Like most outlets and most
Yeah.
talk shows and everything were like, no, we're not saying this guy's name. We're not giving him what he wanted. We're not going to give him that martyrdom that he wanted. And I thought that's a good idea, even if it's someone that lives to see the next day or someone that we had both examples in this last week. So I think, why this time are they so quick to put these guys' names out there? Nobody's taking that stance this time around to say we're not going to talk about these people. We're not going to give them. We know everything about them. I mean, that's available to the police and to the media.
You get into the politics of it. It's definitely being politicized more now, and they're going to jump at the opportunity to take down the other side.
Yeah.
Imagine if they, instead of giving you the I keep wanting to say shooter, but the person that committed the crime's name and all the information. Imagine if they gave you understanding privacy, the first name of every victim, and started telling you about each person's life.
Yeah.
And so instead of bashing you with, a minute by minute play of, this 19-year-old person who did this, you go through the list of, this was Jeannie. Jeannie was a mother of 2. She worked here. She was on her, you know what I mean? Maybe that would set more reality.
They do some of that.
People.
I mean, I've seen some stories. I mean, I don't think they do it as well as they should.
I don't know.
They should do a better job. But some news outlets will.
As interesting.
No,
people want to hear about the shooter.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's not as sensational.
To me, that would reinforce the whole problem because you just said it. It's not interesting. It's not making news.
That I recall reading was a mother in that Walmart that her baby was like a couple months old. Baby survived, but had some broken bones because she shielded the baby and was shot, and then she fell on the baby. So she saved the baby's life. She also broke its bones, and they made a point. They called this out in the story, and they talked about other people that were lost and other people that survived too. And that is, it should all be so off-putting that we don't even want to. It's like I can't consume this. But I would rather read the story about the shooter and his demise or his background than I would read about these tragic stories of loss of life.
Yeah.
Because it's sad. It's sad to hear about these victims and to hear about this motherfucker that also died. But to hear about it's the same reason why we're curious about Ted Bundy and why we're curious about any serial killer, any murderers. We're fucked. We're fucked in the head a little bit as a society, and we want to hear. It's almost vindictive, maybe. It's we want to watch them suffer. We want to know more about them, maybe understand how do you get that fucked up, and then.
I think that's it. I think trying to understand how a person like you could, what does it take to move yourself across the threshold and do something so horrific?
Yeah.
When deep down, on a fundamental level, they're basically the same as you.
Yeah, I would say that's true. I mean,
that's what's
it goes back to falling
the
down.
Interesting part.
The Michael Douglas movie,
right?
I mean, who's the hero? Who's the villain in that movie, right? I mean, we know that Michael Douglas is obviously the villain. He kills people and he's a psychopath. But the interesting thing about that movie is, I think most adults that have ever been stuck in traffic can watch that movie and be like, I see your point.
Everyone identifies with
I see your point. I think you maybe went about the wrong way, but I get where you're coming from, Michael Douglas. I think that's the kind of the oddity of humanity, right? That but we also we don't like sadness. I don't like sadness. I don't like seeing people cry. I don't like seeing people upset. Nobody does. I mean, that's
I don't like sadness, but I don't deny it, and I feel like you can't have one without the other. You know what I mean? You can't have all happy, no sad. And really, in those situations, I mean, out of all the people involved, that's the if you asked everybody involved, they would all talk about the victims. I think they wouldn't care about the shooter other than he was a shitty person that shot my friend or my loved one or my life for whatever reason.
Yes,
it was
if you ask
action
the people
and it was,
that are closely impacted. I agree,
but we kind of shove that aside and we focus. It was the guy had this many guns or the person had
Well, because we're all overly not all, but many of us are overly politicized, including the media. That I mean, before the bodies are cold, someone out there in social media land definitely, and maybe even on Fox News or MSNBC or CNN or one of these, is already trying to draw some political lines. Well, we understand he's a Trump supporter. We understand, and then Fox goes, "Oh no, he's an Elizabeth Warren supporter."
Right.
Oh no, he supported Bernie.
How offensive to the victims' families that must be.
It should be ridiculously offensive,
Yeah.
but I think they're predisposed at that time, so they
in
probably
the
don't even
same
see it.
sense that it's fascinating to us to want to know more about the shooter and why did he do this, and like you said, serial killers, Ted Bundy, like that's fascinating to most of us. We want to know what's going on with them. Why would they do that? That's what's fascinating to these shooters. They think it's cool that these other shooters have done it before. If the fascinating thing was the victims, you'd have all these people trying to be victims. I can't wait until somebody shoots me down.
I'm
in a
talking
Walmart.
about post-action. I'm talking about how the media portrays it and how we focus on it.
I am also. I'm talking about what are people interested in, and people are interested in the shooter. I know we got to wrap it up. People are interested in the shooter, not the victims, and that's unfortunately. But that's why we hear all about it. The news isn't trying to get us to be interested in the shooter. We are interested in the shooter, and they're presenting what we want to hear. They'll let us know about the victims because some people want to know that, but they're giving us what we want to hear. Maybe that's unfortunate, maybe it's not, but I think that's also why these shooters are interested in that, and they want to become that cool thing that everybody wants to read about and find out about. It's kind of twisted, but it's just reality. We're interested in what goes on to become that.
Yeah.
Anyway, all right. We're well past our normal time.
Yeah, we're way over time.
We appreciate you hanging with us here. I hope you got something out of it. I hope we sparked some debate. Maybe we got a little bit
some awareness. If you see someone out there that you think, I mean, look, it's a see something, say something thing, right? If you see someone out there that seems troubled, I think the lessons of the past couple of weeks are that we should probably fucking talk to that person. We should talk to each other about that person and maybe collectively have a conversation or somehow involve law enforcement. But I think there's warning signs, and I think it's sad to see this kind of thing happen because if people were not afraid of confronting the issue, it could be prevented. I'm done talking.
I do this thing. I did it at work today. When I see people and they seem a little off or they seem like they're not acting as they normally do, I always ask them if they're all right. Just point blank.
Yeah.
My coworkers, anybody, I'm just like, are you all right?
Yeah.
And you know what? 9 times out of 10, people will say, well, at first they'll get ready to say, I'm fine. But then they'll go, well, I've like I did it today. And he goes, man, I'm just really stressed out. Like I've just got a lot of work going on and everything. And I think I said, man, it is really crazy here right now with all the things. And I was like, anything I can do to help, let me know.
Yeah.
And that's awkward to do, or it can be.
It wasn't awkward for me. I mean, it seemed
but I think
fine.
even if you just say, how's it going?
People get a little weirded out when you say it. Because they're like, what do you mean? Like, what are you getting at?
Right.
Like, what's your point? But then once they realize, you really mean, are you all right? I'm like, hey, are you all right?
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes I just say it to people like, are you
That's
all
a good point.
right?
People talk about the various greetings that we say to each other in the hallways of the office, like, how's it going? What's going on? And then the responses are like...
You're already gone while the response
and the responses are all stupid because nobody really wants to hear, how it's going for you.
Right.
But if that's one that never gets asked. Hey, you all right? No one ever asks that.
Yeah.
Rarely does that question get asked. And maybe it should get asked more often. But then maybe... you might be afraid of what the answer might be.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, it can be awkward, but I think that's something you need to fight through to where it's not awkward, and we're all okay with just kind of sharing.
Because if everybody did that, I mean, I'm not saying I have the answers, but I'm just saying if everybody did that within their own little ecosystem, well, then that would reach out to pretty much everybody, right?
Well, yeah, hopefully, yeah.
Yeah, but on that note, how can people reach out to us if they want to let us know how shitty of an episode this was or how great of an episode it was?
I don't think it was a shitty episode at all. I think it's really good. A little long, but and we hope you hung in for the whole thing. And but let us know your thoughts at Load This Podcast on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. I have everything queued up for a new post for a couple of our most recent episodes. He thinks I'm lying, but I'm not.
I'll believe it when I see it.
I've been a busy guy lately. It's not getting any slower. Anyway, so check us out on the social stuff at Load This Podcast. Or you can send us an email, loadthispodcast@gmail.com. Or you could send us a message on YouTube. Just click on the comments below. Subscribe on YouTube, please.
Right. And tell your friends. Check it out. They might like
subscribe. And then if you're using a podcast app, subscribe on that too. We like that. What else? we got?
Comment.
Yeah, comment. Tell us what you think.
Send us some snail mail. I'd open a letter.
And how they-
postcard.
how they gonna
nice
get?
Yeah.
How are
postcard.
they going to give me your address? We got a PO box that I'm unaware of.
Well,
I have a
put
few
it out on
friends
social media.
that
Yeah.
still send postcards.
That's right. Yeah.
That's
I-
amazing when you get a
I
postcard.
can't
in the
remember the
mail.
last time I sent a postcard.
Yeah, that's kind of an underrated.
I can't remember the last time I mailed a letter of any
I was just
kind.
going to say,
Yeah.
when's the last time you just got a letter
No.
or a postcard from a friend? I
Last
mean,
time you affixed
maybe
a
a
stamp.
birthday
It
card.
Birthday cards don't count, but yeah.
Last time you put a stamp on something.
Wow. Personally, it's been years. I'm sure
have
my
the-
wife does it.
They have
somewhat
Scooby-Doo
often.
stamps now.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, I was like, wow, we're running
standards
out.
used
like,
to
get
be
shaggy.
higher, right?
I would think.
What's a current stamp cost?
It's like
Like
$3. I don't
yeah.
know.
Right.
I don't know.
It's a car payment to get
Yeah.
a letter
They
across
won't
the
even tell
country.
you. They're just like,
Right.
it's forever.
Yeah.
It's
There's a
forever.
big. Remember, there was a big deal about Elvis being on the stamp, and it
Yeah.
should be Fat Elvis or Skinny. Now we got fucking Scooby Doo and Shaggy.
Scooby-Doo's
Yeah.
on
But is it
there.
Fat Scooby Doo or Skinny Scooby Doo?
I don't know. Well, I think there's only one Scoob. Is it stoned or
Right.
I think it's always stoned.
Yeah, pretty much.
Or stone shaggy.
All right.
Right.
Well, we appreciate you listening. Hopefully you're stoned, not stoned, whatever.
yeah,
We appreciate Dave sitting in with us again.
yeah. Thanks, Dave.
Always
you.
good. We get into the deep shit with Dave. So
Yeah.
always fun.
Deep shit.
He will be invited back. So, all right. We appreciate it. Until next time, I'm Jared.
I'm right.
And I'm Dave.
And get a load of this.